Games rated RP to M. Welcome to Nintendo Power Podcast. This episode, we talk about lots of big new games coming this year to Nintendo Switch. My name is Chris Slate. Joining me today are Bill Trennan from Nintendo Treehouse. Hi, Bill.
Good morning.
And Anthony Foster from the social media team here at Nintendo of America. Hi, Anthony.
How's it going, Chris?
Great. So thanks for coming on the show. And hey, guys, I don't know if you're aware, but we just had a new Nintendo Direct.
Yes, we did.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, and there was a lot of great game announced for this year that have me very excited. So let's jump right in and talk about two of the biggest ones, starting with Super Mario Maker 2. Now, this was announced for this June, so it's just a few months away. And I don't know about you guys, but I put like 600 hours into the original Super Mario Maker.
Wow.
And this might be, of all the great games that are coming out this year, for me, this might be the one I'm looking forward to the most.
Well, yeah, and of course it's Super Mario Maker 2, so they've gone in and they have added in a whole bunch of new elements that you didn't have in the original Super Mario Maker. Of course, the biggest kind of new addition is what a lot of people wanted, which was the ability to create actual slopes within the game. But beyond that, there's tons of new stuff in there that I think a sharp-eyed viewer may have noticed in the trailer.
Speaking of which, I don't know that I'm very sharp-eyed, but I did go frame by frame and watch this trailer about a dozen times. And I caught quite a bit. Like you said, the most notable new addition are the slopes, which I was one of those people that was really looking forward to that. I just want to do those Mario butt slides right through the line of Goombas.
Yep.
That's always a lot of fun. And also, but even before that, I think the first thing you see, Anthony, is the new kind of wheel-based selection system for the tool palettes. Obviously, a lot of people were wondering how, if another Super Mario Maker game ever did come to Nintendo Switch, how would they adapt that, the way you interact? Because the original game was really built around that additional two-screen option you had with the Wii U.
Yeah, and kind of from what I saw, it looks like really intuitive, and I kind of had the same question immediately as soon as I saw just the gameplay. I'm like, well, how do you kind of do the same things? And just kind of understanding Nintendo Switch now and just kind of the way people are playing, it definitely seems like it's super intuitive, and it's not going to be difficult for somebody who's also new to Super Mario Maker to jump in and start making these really cool courses.
Yeah, it seems that way. I mean, I haven't played the game yet, obviously, but it looks very snappy, and I really like the way that the wheels seem to arrange all of the different items by category, like enemies or items or terrain, which is something that the original game didn't necessarily do unless you went in there and manually rearranged them yourself. So it looks like it could be even like faster to use.
Yeah, I mean, the team's definitely looked at, obviously, the original game, and they've, looked at how can they really make that the best experience possible on Nintendo Switch. So hopefully when people get their hands on it, they'll find that the team's done a really great job of really making it accessible and usable and fun to still kind of create and build your courses.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that I noticed right off the bat was a new style, Super Mario 3D World.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, it was great to see Cat Mario back. And
the clear pipes.
Yeah, the clear pipes, which you can
cool.
like throw fireballs into and have them come out the other side. So already I'm thinking about new puzzle elements I can put in my levels. You can even see the enemies go into those clear pipes. And then, of course, just the Super Bell power-up to be able to turn into Cat Mario that we see in the trailer. You even can place inside those bell-shaped trees, just like in the game. In Super Mario 3D World.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really cool too, because for somebody like me or who played the original Super Mario Maker and played older Mario games, you kind of got that designer itch. Like you kind of want to be a game designer in your own right and play this game to make your own stages and kind of play that role. And with Super Mario the World style in there now, I wonder if there's a lot of maybe new Switch owners or younger gamers who played maybe that game, like, oh wow, I really want to create something like this. And so it's really cool that kind of opens a new door for those people.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because, I tend to gravitate when I make my levels more toward the old school kind of pixel art Mario games because those are the ones that I grew up with. But for newer generations of players, it could be that Super Mario 3D World was the first game they jumped on with. So it makes all the sense in the world to continue to update those styles. And And I just think that another thing about adding in the Cat Mario functionality is you saw a lot of the really well-made levels for the first game would take one particular play mechanic and really max it out. You'd really have to master it and learn it in new ways. And I just can't wait to see what people do with climbing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, climbing was such a big part of Cat Mario, and then just even I just love the motion of Cat Mario.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Super fun.
And then you've got a lot of those recognizable Super Mario 3D World areas in the backgrounds too, and that's something else I noticed watching the trailer over and over was that there seems to be some new backgrounds for each of the styles. I think there was the part where you see kind of the angry sun from Super Mario Brothers 2 chasing you. There was like a desert area with palm trees in the background. So that's something else that I would appreciate having in my levels is more variety and what they can actually look like.
Yeah, it just goes to show, I saw so much stuff in that trailer, and you said you put 600 hours into the first game. I mean, you must just be like, I'm gonna put 1,000 hours, when this game comes out, just because now there's all these other things that you're talking about, just to add on top of some of the things you're gonna be picking up, from remembering playing the Super Mario Maker 1. So.
Yeah, and I mean, there were so many options in the original Super Mario Maker, and I think in some cases having limitations. I think just like I think back to maybe what Mr. Miyamoto and Mr. Tezuka experienced when they created those original Super Mario games, is you had such technological limitations that it forces you to be creative in how you use them. And so I appreciated that, but at the same time, of course, you always want to, once you push those limits, you always want a little bit more. So, even with enemies, I've made a list here of the ones that I noticed that weren't in the original game. You've got a super piranha plant that kind of lunges at you now. You've got that blue guy with the horns. I think he's called Bully, that will bump you off of a level. You've got Sting Bee, which is the bee, and Porky Puffer, which is the purple spiky fish, and the mouse called Skip Squeak and things like that. It just seems like there's going to be a lot of new options.
Well, and then, of course, the other thing that I'm excited about is just with the portable nature of Switch, being able to take it on the road and, be able to build anywhere. If I'm sitting on a plane and I've got a couple hours to blow on an airplane ride, just being able to sit there and, spend a long flight building sort of the perfect level, I think that's going to be, really handy.
Yeah, some of your best creations can come from a road trip with mom and dad, or
That's right.
waiting in the airport.
Whenever inspiration strikes.
That's right.
Yeah.
And just a few other things I noticed. I mentioned the different backgrounds. There was like a Super Mario World kind of woods background, and also in the trailer you see in that scene, rising and lowering water, which wasn't in the last game. And
you've clearly watched this trailer many times.
Breaking it down.
You know what I did is I actually watched this trailer so many times, and then I immediately went back to Super Mario Maker on Wii U and spent another dozen hours making a whole new level. So I've also refreshed in my mind exactly what was in that original game. One of the more obvious additions in the trailer for the new game is the on-off blocks, which is the kind of thing I think a lot of people will really get really creative with. There's that big kind of exclamation mark block that's from Super Mario 3D World where you bump into it and it creates platforms.
Yep.
There was a red pipe. I don't know why red pipe is in there, but I saw one. And little parachutes for enemies so they can kind of float down. And then this is something that was really pointed out in the trailer that seems like a great idea, is that little bird icon where you can kind of place one bird in one location and then move the bird to the next location, and the camera will move in that direction.
Oh yeah.
Which is great for those airship levels where the camera always kind of has a mind of its own.
Look at you, man.
Yeah.
You analyze this.
Yeah, back in my old Nintendo Power Magazine days, I probably would have done a whole feature just on all these little things that we found out.
I had no idea you were such a Mario Maker fan.
Oh boy, yeah. Chris and I, I've talked in the past about his Mario Maker hours that he's put into the game.
It's an obsession. Some other folks in the treehouse know how obsessed I am with making these. And actually, I got lucky in that I made a NES tribute level that recreated a lot of classic NES games using the character costumes in the original game. And for whatever reason, it just kind of hit at just the right time early on and ended up getting a lot of people playing it. So that just encouraged me to make
yeah.
more and more and to try to fill up all those little medallions on my profile. So yeah, that became an obsession for sure. And also my son is really into it. He's kind of an aspiring coder. He wants to make games when he gets older. And so this was a great, jumping on point for him to kind of learn, basic game design.
Yeah.
And so it's also something we really bonded over. We would make levels for each other and challenge each other all the time.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Really cool.
And, we both have our own Nintendo Switch systems. So
Yeah.
it's going to be on again when this new game comes out.
Yeah, definitely. Just kind of like how it strikes the young game designer in you. Now it's striking the just a little bit older game designer in me.
Yeah,
because I haven't been able to scratch that. So with Super Mario Maker 2, I'm gonna definitely be putting a lot of hours. Maybe not getting to 500, 1,000 as fast as you, Chris, but I'll try. I'll be trying at least.
Yep, man, it's gonna be great sharing those levels around the office. All right, so the next big game that I want to focus in on from the Nintendo Direct was The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening.
Yes.
Bill, this was the biggest surprise for me. I never would have expected this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's been, the team's been working on it for a while now, but for me, I was so excited that this game was coming to Nintendo Switch. If you think back, it's, one of the earlier Zelda games that I think has been really ripe for being recreated that has never been redone, at least not since the Game Boy Color version, which obviously was just a upgraded color version of the original and only separated by a few years. And so it's such a phenomenal game. And I'm excited just because of, with the top-down approach, it means that you've got a game that obviously is, if you're a fan who grew up on Link's Awakening like I did, you're going to love this. If you're new to the Zelda series, or your first experience with Zelda has been on Switch, or you're new to Switch and you have never tried a Zelda game, the top-down approach of it, I think, is something that's going to be really appealing for a really broad audience. And then the graphics are, I don't know what your thoughts were, but I absolutely adore them.
Yeah. That was one of the biggest surprises, and I thought it looked amazing. Anthony, what about you?
Yeah, it's super refreshing. And as Bill kind of mentioned, there are a lot of people who, Breath of the Wild, that might be your first Zelda game, or even prior to Breath of the Wild, you might have played a Zelda game that's not quite that same style, that top-down style. And so it's pretty fascinating to see how, a lot of Legend of Zelda fans, that have been playing the game for years, grew up on Link's Awakening, they might talk about Link's Awakening like, that's my favorite game. But, if you didn't grow up in that time, then you never played that game before. So it's great to, to kind of revisit it for a lot of new fans, and then also have just a totally new experience with Link that's much different than, anything you've kind of played on Nintendo Switch thus far. So, yeah, it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, I think it's the perfect kind of game to come after Breath of the Wild, because it's, if you enjoyed The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, it obviously has a lot of those same kind of hallmark Zelda elements, but it's also very different. So it'll be a very fresh kind of adventure for you. And, I have a lot of friends, and this seems to be a common feeling from what I can tell out there, but I have a lot of friends in particular who, for them, the original Link's Awakening is one of their favorite, if not their actual favorite Zelda game. And, that might be surprising to some newer fans if you look back at the old Game Boy graphics and you think, well, how could that hold a candle to something like Breath of the Wild? But I think there's a lot of reasons that that the game really holds a special place for a lot of fans. And I think a lot of that has to do with a lot of the memorable characters and elements and storyline. Bill, can you, for people that maybe aren't as familiar with the original game, you want to give just kind of general setup for what it's all about?
Well, yeah, and you actually even saw the setup in the revealed trailer itself. The original game starts off with sort of a pixelated version of the animated intro that we saw, where essentially the idea is that Link is returning to Hyrule by boat from some distant trials that he had gone on, gets caught in a storm, and then in the midst of the storm, his boat gets struck by lightning and blown to bits, and he washes ashore on this island. And he's essentially told that there's no way off the island, and he's got to try to awaken this creature that lives on the island in order for him to be able to go home. And so he embarks on this adventure, and it is, you mentioned the memorable characters. It's, I think, for certainly coming after the original Legend of Zelda on NES and Zelda 2 on NES, this game was kind of remarkable at the time for the way that it introduced these quirky characters and this storyline into the game in kind of a deeper way than you'd seen, I think, in other Zelda games up until that point. And the characters really come alive. And there's even, as you're playing, you may encounter one or two who, some who are, vaguely familiar from the series, if you're familiar with the series. Some, this might be the first game where they appeared. And some, you never see them outside of this game. And so it's really this nice little collection. They've all kind of got their own little stories.
That's great.
It's really cool.
And along those lines, I think this was one of the first games for me in the series where it seemed like there was, typically, this isn't entirely true. Even going back to the original Legend of Zelda game on NES, there's a lot of stuff to discover in the overworld. But it seemed like the dungeons are where things got really puzzly and tricky. But in this game, it seems like every screen of the overworld also has some mystery behind it. And a lot of that has to do with the characters, or a lot of just straight out puzzles you have to figure out. So I felt like it was a very dense game in that regard, that whether you were above ground or below, there was always stuff kind of challenging you to think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like maybe that's, that lends to the fact that this is a lot of people's favorite Zelda game just because of the depth of the game. Of course, you play a game like Breath of the Wild on Nintendo Switch, and that looks amazing, and it's got, this really cool art style, which this game also looks like it has a super refreshing art style. But, I think the depth of the game, kind of like what you're speaking to, is what makes it really special.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that to me, one of the things that I love about Zelda is the fact that with just about every entry, they redo the art style. It's one of the few series where it's just constantly changing with every installment of the game, and they've, I think, nailed it again this time with kind of the look of this little miniature world and Link running around in there, and it's perfectly suited for sort of this 2D top-down view.
Yeah, and it kind of has that same quirky charm as the game, because this is a game where, or rather the original game, was a game where it was... It could have some surprising emotional resonance, but then at the same time, it had some of the goofiest kind of stuff. I mean, there's a chain chomp in this game, and you see in the trailer that there's a Goomba that there are small side-scrolling portions. You can actually squish a Goomba as Link.
Yeah.
So it's this fun mix of all sorts of stuff and all sorts of flavors for a Zelda game, and then for this new version, for this reimagining, Link just has the cutest little dot eyes that I kept focusing on. And the sounds, too. There's something about the sound effects in the trailer where, when things clank against his shield and things, it kind of matches that kind of visual feel that you're almost looking at these little creatures on a table out in front of you or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny how you mentioned, there's all these weird things in it that are references, like the chain chomp and the Goomba, and it's like, we were talking about this earlier, I was 3 years old when the original Link's Awakening came out, and then I remember playing the Game Boy Color version of the game, and all that stuff wasn't really weird to me because it was just kind of like, this is the game that I'm playing, and this is really awesome, and so I'm just gonna keep playing it. But then after seeing the trailer for this game, this reimagining, and kind of doing my research again, looking back up, and I'm like, wow, yeah, that's really funny. It's got all these weird, quirky elements to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the DX version of that game for Game Boy Color added an additional color-based dungeon.
Yeah, it did. In fact, that was the I worked on the DX game, and so that was the first Zelda game I ever finished.
Oh wow!
Wow. So I mean, hopefully you weren't 3, Anthony, but
no, I was 8 years old.
I was plugging
time.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was already working for a video game magazine at the time, so. Just another way to make me feel old, Anthony.
You're doing it all for me,
That's right.
All right. Well, there was obviously a lot more than just those two games in the Nintendo Direct, and I'm going to read through some of them, and then afterwards, I just want to ask you guys what kind of pops out to you personally. To start with, I was excited to see Captain Toad's Special Edition, the paid DLC. I think
with the
March 14th.
free update for co-op in every level, which is actually, I'm really excited about that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Me too. That's another game that I play a lot with my little boy, but we've never been able to play 2-player.
Yeah.
Yes, that's going to be great. Yoshi's Crafted World on March 29th. Obviously, the demo's out now, and I couldn't be more excited for that game. Yeah. Box Boy and Box Girl, April 26th. 270 new stages, the most in the series, and that's a series I don't know if a lot of people have really checked it out, but on 3DS, I love those games. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Challenge Pack 1 with Joker. That's coming before the end of April. And then in the spring, we get version 3.0. And also a new amiibo this year. Fire Emblem Three Houses. We learned a lot more about that game coming on July 26th. And then, wow, Astral Chain, another big surprise from Platinum Game on August 30th. And then Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 The Black Order coming this summer. And then finally, Dragon Quest XI-S, Echoes of an Elusive Age for fall. And then lastly here, Daemon Ex Machina, which again has a demo out now and is another really promising looking title. So, but we'll start with you. I mean, obviously, I'm sure a lot of that you're excited to play, but is there any things in particular that pop out to you?
Well, yeah, as I mentioned, I think the adding co-op to Captain Toad, and that's a free download that's out, or it's a free update that's out, I think today, or launched alongside the demo or alongside the direct itself. And then, so that I'm just really excited about because, Captain Toad is sort of the perfect thing to kind of sit down together with. I've got a daughter, and she will absolutely love sitting down and playing that together. And then with the additional courses, I think it's funny to have seen how the Captain Toad sort of journey started and then evolved into its own game, because obviously those were sort of like these little kind of mini puzzles within Super Mario 3D World, I think it was. And then they became their own game, and now to see them come to Switch, and they're still adding things like co-op play and additional levels, to me as a Toad fan, I'm just really excited for that. And you also mentioned Box Boy and Box Girl, and it's such a good series. I'm a big fan of HAL Labs, HAL Laboratories. I've worked with them for a long time and been big fans of their work. I love their logo of the dog and the egg.
Yeah, that's great.
But the Box Boy series to me is one that if you like puzzle platforming, it's adorable for its simplicity, but it is incredible amounts of fun. And like you mentioned, this new game that's coming to Switch, number one, it's good that Box Boy is back, because the last one was Bye Bye Box Boy. So I'm glad we're not having to actually say goodbye. But the amount of content in this is just staggering. So if there is one game that you're like, yeah, I really want to try something from the eShop in the next month or two, I would say get Box Boy.
Yeah, I totally agree. Obviously, I haven't played the new game yet, but like I said, I played all the other ones, and it's just the perfect kind of addictive time waster, and it's perfect for a portable platform. Certainly it was for Nintendo 3DS, and it's going to be a great game to play on the go, I think, for Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, and Bill, as you were kind of talking about the co-op with Captain Toad, one of the great things I've been able to do with Switch with my wife is just kind of introduce her to all these new franchises and games that have, co-op that, maybe have not in the past. And so with this, I've played the game, but she has not played the game. So we are definitely going to be playing some co-op Captain Toad very soon. So yeah,
that's great. Yeah, I think a lot more people need to discover that game. It's a real gem. And for me, if I had to pick just one thing out of this list, maybe Astral Chain, because I feel like that tease was just enough to get me excited, and I still don't know that much about it. But you look at the pedigree of Platinum Games and the people that are involved, and it just looks like it's going to be a really, really exciting game.
Yeah, it's definitely, when that game kind of showed up and you're like, oh, what is this? And then you start watching them more, you're like, oh my gosh. And so I kind of just kept doing that throughout the whole thing. And then the dog comes out and I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? This is amazing. I need this now. So that game's definitely like the one that I kind of like popped off at, after seeing it.
I need the Anthony reaction video.
Yeah, the reaction video. Just, oh my God, what is this going on? So yeah, no, the game looks amazing. And, that kind of cool, kind of where two characters are kind of fighting at the same time, that it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out, and all the elements in that trailer. Just, there's a lot of questions, but I'm really excited too.
Yeah, I think that's just a beautiful looking game. And then, like you said, all the new gameplay mechanics, I want to learn more about that. And then also the little hints of story that they show you really gets me excited for what it'll be like to play through the full game. So.
Well, yeah, and I just love, this is sort of, I think, what's so great about the partnership between Nintendo and Platinum Games, because to me, I look at that and I see the kind of intense action game that historically you haven't really seen a lot of on Nintendo platforms. So that with this, the collaboration with Platinum Games, being able to bring stuff like that, and of course knowing that they mentioned, of course, Bayonetta 3 is still in the works. It really helps to round out the library overall of what's available on Switch. And of course, that's another game that's maybe coming a little bit sooner than people anticipated.
Yeah,
it's later this year. That's
the most exciting thing, honestly, about this Nintendo Direct was of all this stuff, and it's all coming this year.
Yeah, a lot of stuff coming this year, and I'm still playing Super Smash Bros. Ultimate a lot.
Yeah.
And
how many hours is it now?
I'm at like 230 hours now. And sometimes I feel like I'm the best player ever, and then somebody quickly just shows me that I have a lot to work on. So I think that's maybe why I have so many hours in the game. But yeah, just the hearing about the upcoming update in that game, I'm really excited to see what that's all about. And obviously we have Joker coming, which is going to be huge, especially for fans of the Persona series. So yeah, Super Smash is just one of the few things, but Astral Chain also definitely one of the big exciting points for me.
Yeah, I feel like Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is this game that kind of, in a way, keeps getting reintroduced with these upcoming DLC. So it's going to have a presence for me all year.
Right.
In between all these other games, I'll just keep coming back to that.
Well, yeah, and I do feel like the spacing of it's kind of perfect because we just had Piranha Plant release. People are still mastering Piranha Plant, kind of understanding the meta of that character and figuring out, what you can and can't do, what the matchups are. And right as you've gotten to the point where I think people finally really will be able to have truly mastered that character, then in comes Joker and gives you kind of a new thing to dive into and really get your hands on and figure out, okay, what's next for me.
Yeah, keeps kind of putting fresh blood into the game.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of other games that are coming out this year, I want to turn it over to Player's Pulse. And before actually the Nintendo Direct was aired, we went ahead and asked people through Twitter what games they're looking forward to most this year. So obviously they wouldn't have known about a lot of these games we just talked about at that point. But this is a good reminder of some of the other big games that had already been announced for 2019. So I'm just going to list off a few of the games that some folks mentioned. Matt Acevedo said Luigi's Mansion 3 for sure. I love 1, and seeing how much was added in Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon makes me wonder what kind of fresh ideas will be included to make Part 3 one of a kind. So are either of you big Luigi's Mansion fans?
I'm a big Luigi's Mansion fan. Yeah. I don't know about you, Anthony.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those games that I picked up, when I was probably I think it was like middle school era, high school maybe. Sorry, my memory fades me, but yeah, definitely, and then I played the game again on 3DS. So I'm definitely familiar with the game and love Luigi just as a character. So I'm really excited to see what direction Luigi's Mansion 3 takes.
Yeah, it was great to play the original game again on Nintendo 3DS recently and kind of get back in the spirit, especially knowing that this game's coming down the line. So I can't wait to find out more about it. Next, from Chandler Keith Lozada says, Sayonara Wild Hearts. It looks amazing, and the snippets of music from the trailer sound phenomenal. Now, this game, I was really glad to see someone mention this game. It's not maybe one of the games you would first think of, but it really captured a lot of attention when that initial trailer came out a little while back. And it was just so different looking, but it had such style, and the music was amazing. I don't even know really how you would describe this game yet. They describe it as a pop album video game, but it's definitely caught my attention.
Yeah, and the visual style of that's another one that I think is top notch. It looks really cool. It sounds really cool, and I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun to play.
Yeah, definitely any game where right off the bat it feels like it's as much of a experience with the music and the sounds as it is just visually. I'm super interested in, and just kind of seeing the visuals from that game, and it seems like there's so many different things happening, and you kind of want to listen to it, but you'd also kind of want to be really into it. So into the gameplay. So yeah, that game just looks really kind of quirky and weird, but I'm really excited for that too.
Yeah, it's one of those games you can tell just by glancing at it that whoever made it had like a big idea, they were really passionate about some bold new direction. So you got to see where that goes. Okay, next from Sylvia. She says, Animal Crossing. I have so many great memories playing with my daughter and friends, and I'm looking forward to making new ones. I also can't wait to see if any new features are added to the game. And actually, Animal Crossing got the most responses from people on Twitter when we asked what games they were looking forward to. So a lot of Animal Crossing love out there.
Yeah, definitely. I know that's the one that a lot of my friends are excited for too. And if you're on the internet, you see people talking about how many hours they're still putting into the game till this day. So yeah, I'm excited for that. I mean, it's kind of crazy just because there are so many games coming out.
Yeah.
So to think that that's a game that's in the lineup, but then we still have Link's Awakening, we still have Astral Chain, we still have all these other games coming out. It's really amazing.
Yeah, and I know people who are really hardcore into the Animal Crossing mobile game still. Yeah. And I think for a lot of those type of people who maybe discovered Animal Crossing for the first time, this will be the first real opportunity they have to dive into a bigger, console version of the game.
Yeah, and speaking of Animal Crossing, the mobile game is, as you would expect, is something that has kind of grown and evolved since that initial launch, and there's a lot more to it that they've added to that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's really kept a lot of those people so passionate about playing it on a regular basis. So, as you're maybe waiting for the Switch game, it might be worth diving in to see what you've kind of been missing out on in terms of those new additions to Animal Crossing Pocket Camp.
Yeah, that's true of a lot of those mobile titles. Is if you take even a few weeks off and you go back in there, it's almost like an entirely new experience sometimes.
Well, yeah, and that's one thing I've been trying to do too is keep up with the mobile game, just to keep myself in that universe. Obviously I can go back and play Animal Crossing on Nintendo 3DS, but something about having that mobile game and just being able to dive in super quick is great. And so I'll definitely be playing that leading up to when the game comes out.
Yeah, definitely. All right, finally from Poke Experto, if I'm saying that right, he simply says Pokemon because new generation. So we're talking a lot about
great reason. There you go.
Yeah, and we're talking a lot about big franchises here, but you can't forget there's a new core Pokemon RPG on the way that we've announced is coming late this year. So that's going to be a big one.
Yeah, I mean, anytime there's a new generation of Pokemon, it's big.
Yeah,
that's one that really hits close to home for me because that was one of Pokemon Red and Blue, Yellow. Those are the games that I grew up on. So I'm just excited for any and everything Pokemon. Still playing Pokemon Let's Go. So when it comes out, I'll have it and I'll put plenty of hours into it.
Yep, I'm sure I will too. All right, now let's move on to pros picks. As always, these are the games that we've been enjoying lately. Bill, want to start us off? What have you been playing lately?
Well, like Anthony, I've been playing a lot of Smash, but maybe not quite as much Smash as Anthony has. I actually just with the last Splatfest got back into Splatoon 2 and started kind of grinding on ranked battles again. And I'd forgotten. I think I've probably put in 170-ish hours into that game and forgotten how much I love it because I'd taken a break for a while. So it's good to get back into that. But the thing that I've really just recently started on is it was a game that was I think it got announced probably about 2 years ago when we were first showing off Switch fairly early on, and has kind of been. The team's been working on it for a while, and then it finally just released recently after it was featured in the last Indie Direct just a little bit ago, and that's Wargroove. And as soon as it released, I bought it and downloaded it, and then it sat on my Switch for a little bit, and I finally just started playing it. But I'm a big fan of that type of game, and just starting to get my kind of dig into that, and I'm really enjoying it though.
Yeah, me too. I've been playing it a lot lately. I wasn't the biggest fan of turn-based strategy games until I'd say Fire Emblem Awakening. And I think that game, for me, like it did, I think for a lot of people, really brought me into not just the Fire Emblem franchise, but into the genre. And I had enjoyed some past games in like the Advance War series on Game Boy Advance. And I really get that kind of feel here with Wargroove. It's obviously more of a fantasy-based turn-based strategy game, but it has that kind of same strategy where you're manipulating your units on the field, and you have to think about how you want to spend your gold and what you're going to build for the next round. And what I've really enjoyed is I've mentioned this a couple times, but whenever I have the chance, I like playing games with my kids a lot. And they have a great multiplayer mode in this where you can go against each other, or a lot of times my son's just starting to learn how to play these types of games. So we'll team up, and his army and my army will take on a third army that's controlled by the CPU. And I've even played this online a few times. Love the whole idea that you can create your own levels, not just the levels, but even your own kind of story sequences. You
Yeah.
can really build out your own campaign. There's a lot to this game.
Yeah, definitely. And so for me, there's a couple games that like I'm kind of always playing, right? So Super Smash Bros. Ultimate being one of those. Always Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. My wife and I play that quite a bit. The battle mode online, we play it a lot. And games like Dragon Ball FighterZ. So I play those kind of a lot. Definitely, I picked up Wargroove just recently and put just a little bit of time to that, and I really like that style. But one game I played a lot that kind of has a similar style is Into the Breach. And, I played a lot of that game, especially when I was kind of traveling. I was on a plane, and I didn't want to get off the plane because I had played, X amount of hours. And it's really one of those games where, the longer you play, you just kind of accrue more things. And once you die, you can carry those things on in your next play session. But it definitely does make the game a little bit more difficult. So that's one that I've been really into recently, as well as Dead Cells. So those are a couple games that I'm playing right now.
Getting back into Dead Cells, huh?
Yeah, it's definitely one that I kind of put down for a little bit, and then just kind of random popped in my head. I kind of want to play Dead Cells again, and so it's really easy to just get back in and kind of start that roguelike adventure again. That's the type of style of game I really like. So.
Yeah, it's a very challenging game, but you make a good point. It's very easy to put it down for a while and come back because it's always randomized after that initial start, so it's not like you have to remember where you are in the world or anything like that.
Well, and it's funny, I did the exact same thing where I actually had hit a wall in Dead Cells where I just I couldn't get past a certain point, and I put it down, and then same thing, literally 4 weeks ago, I started playing it again. And all of a sudden, everything clicked, and it was it just felt easier than it did when I put it down. And so now I'm loving it again.
Marinated for you a little bit, and so you're able to think about that stuff a little bit more.
That's great. Well, for me, I've been playing a lot of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate as well, and like I said, a lot of Wargroove. But another one I'll mention is Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom. This game came out, I want to say only a week before Super Smash Bros. Ultimate or something like that. And for that week, I was hardcore into it. And then I, like everything else in my life, it all got dropped when Super Smash Bros. Ultimate came out. But I've been coming back to the game recently and really enjoying it some more. For anybody who remembers the old Sega Wonder Boy games from back Sega Master System or Sega Genesis, it feels a lot like those. And in fact, a remake of the game that this is kind of the spiritual successor to came out on Nintendo Switch, I want to say a couple years ago. And that one was great. I had a lot of fun with that too. But it's fun to play a brand new adventure in that style. Lots of platforming, some puzzles, really great aesthetic. So I think if anybody likes those old school kind of platforming, and it's a little Metroid-like, and there's a big world that you're constantly kind of unlocking new parts of. So there's a lot there to really dig into. So next up, let's move on to the Warp Zone quiz.
Uh-oh.
Now, as always, these are games that came out 10, 20, and 30 years ago, and we're going to be looking at games that were released in the month of February. Okay, you guys ready?
Go for it.
Okay, here we go.
Anthony, are you even 30 yet?
No comment.
You may be at a disadvantage for that one.
Yeah, that's okay.
So for the first time here, it's 10 years ago. This is February of 2009. Nintendo published a strategy game for Nintendo DS that was a remake of a Japan-only game from 1990. And in the game, when you died, you stayed dead. Any guesses on what this game is?
I know what this is. I'm going to see what Anthony's got.
It's tough going against someone from the treehouse.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a weighted table here. Gosh, I don't have a guess.
You don't have a guess?
I don't have a guess.
Oh. It was Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon.
That's right.
Wow. Bill had it down to the
the big hint is that when you die, you stay dead. That's kind of a staple of the series. Yep. But knowing the specific title, that's pretty impressive.
Title. Yeah. And I'm definitely more of a recent Fire Emblem fan, so this is good history for me.
And this is the original version of this game. I think was the very first in the series, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was It's funny because obviously, before there were ever Fire Emblem releases in the U.S., there was Smash Brothers, And Super Smash Brothers Melee had the first appearance of Marth in the United States. But this Shadow Dragon was the first Fire Emblem game that Marth appeared in, which was the original. And so this remake was a remake of the original game featuring Marth. So, but that was the first time that Marth appeared in a Fire Emblem game in the U.S.
Yeah, so we learned about Marth kind of backwards in a way.
Yeah.
Well, great. Okay, moving on to the next one. This is 20 years ago, February of 1999. Nintendo published a multiplayer game for Nintendo 64 in which all the characters tried to prove they were the biggest superstar with tug-of-wars, paddle battles, slot car derbies, and more.
Is this one a trick question?
If you think it's easy, then it probably is.
Is Mario Party?
That's right. That's right. The very first Mario Party. Can you believe that? 20 years old now this month.
That was the very first game I worked on at Nintendo.
Was it really?
Wow.
Well, it was the first game I worked on when I was in localization. Before that, I translated some bug reports on Ocarina of Time. But yeah, that was the first game I ever localized. Wow. So that was very much a loaded question.
Definitely one of my first with a group of friends real party game experience. Is just where the one at least I can remember, especially when you mentioned like tug of war. That's one of those ones that just sticks in your head from playing it all those years ago.
And I was surprised. I didn't realize that the group arguing over who was the biggest superstar was like a recurring theme, because I remembered that's how the new game starts for Nintendo Switch.
Oh yeah.
All right, so 30 years ago, the one advantage you have going here, Anthony, is that this was not a Nintendo published title. So
that's an advantage.
So
Bill probably still knows it though.
All right, so this again, 30 years ago, February of 1989, Tecmo published a game for the NES that featured 12 teams in 12 U.S. cities and an unstoppable hero named Bo Jackson. Any guesses?
Tecmo Bowl.
Tecmo
That's
Bowl.
right.
It's funny because I have a lot of big Raider fans, and so they always talk about Bo Jackson. So, and we always talk about Tecmo Bowl. So that's one that resonates with me.
There was this kind of came back in pop culture not too long ago, because there was a whole TV commercial campaign for something, I forget what, that featured Tecmo Bowl and Bo Jackson.
Bo knows.
Bo knows.
Yeah, that's always the thing where it's like, let's play Tecmo Bowl, but I get to use Bo Jackson.
Yeah. All right, well, before we go, let's end with the game forecast. As always, these are some of the key games that are going to be coming out for Nintendo Switch over the next month, and we're actually going to kind of go from here until the rest of February and through March as well. So starting on February 12th, we have The Liar Princess and the Blind Prince. On February 13th, Final Fantasy IX. Then on February 14th, we have Steins Gate Elite and also Ollie Ollie Switch Stance. Then on February 26th, we have Trials Rising. On February 28th, it's Ape Out. And then on March 1st, we have Treasure Stack and Toe Jam and Earl Back in the Groove. And then on March 8th, it's Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn for Nintendo 3DS. And finally, on March 29th, Yoshi's Crafted World. Lots of stuff here. Is there anything personally for you guys that jumps out?
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to Yoshi's Crafted World.
Yeah.
I'm just a big fan of the Yoshi games. They're a different style of platforming. It's not like Mario where you've got a time limit. You've got to get to the end of the stage in a certain amount of time. It's really just kind of about exploring and finding all those little hidden secrets. And I'm just a big Yoshi fan. Yoshi's my main in Smash Brothers. And this game has a lot of charm and personality in it, which I think you probably saw in the latest Nintendo Direct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That was one thing I did see in the Nintendo Direct, is that all the kind of fun, just kind of weird looking things in Yoshi's Crafted World that were showed off. Yoshi racing and flying through the air, and there's the flip side and all these things. So I'm really looking forward to that game. One game that you called out there is Trials, which I had a really fun experience with that game just a few years back when I picked it up for the first time, and I really kind of like that physics-based style of gameplay, and just kind of being right on the edge of something and being able to make it, and then all of a sudden something explodes and your guy just goes flying 10 miles away or whatever. So that's a game that I always kind of am interested in every time I see it.
Yeah, I think those sound great. Probably if I were to pick one, Bill, it'd be Yoshi, because I was such a huge fan of Yoshi's Woolly World, and I love when they get really crafty and really put a lot into that unique kind of look. But one other one I'll mention is Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn for Nintendo 3DS, because the original Kirby's Epic Yarn on Wii just happens to be the first game that it was the game I used to introduce my children to video games.
Oh, yeah.
Because obviously it was a very easy game to play. And I know they've added a bit more, I think, challenge and some additional...
The devilish mode.
Devilish mode, yeah.
Yeah, to this version. But I have a real fondness for that game because I enjoyed it myself, and it had a great, unique look, but also just being the game that both of my kids, that got them into games, it'll always kind of have a special place in my heart.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one too. And, I've loved every Kirby game. Kirby Star Allies was great. And I can't say I played too much of Kirby's Epic Yarns, so being able to play this version, and then also there's the Devilish mode, which we were just talking about, which seems really cool. I'm really excited to try that part out.
Yeah, it'll be cool to go back and kind of relive the fun of that game, but also play some stuff that I didn't before.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Bill and Anthony, you guys, thanks so much for coming on the show, and we're going to have to talk a lot more throughout the year as we get some of these games finally coming out.
Yeah,
definitely. I'm sure we'll have countless Super Mario Maker conversations.
Yeah, you won't be able to stop me.
Yeah.
It'll get to the point we'll want to, but I'll keep talking about it.
Yeah, we'll just put an hour aside every day to talk about it.
All right, well, thanks again, you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot.
That's it for this episode of Nintendo Power Podcast. If you have any comments or questions you'd like us to consider answering on the show, you can email us at nintendopowerpodcast@noa.nintendo.com. Also, we always appreciate it if you can leave us a review, and be sure to subscribe so you get new episodes as soon as they're ready. Thanks for listening, and keep playing with power.